Okay, well, it's 6:30 and I'd like to welcome you to this session. This is a session of the BCS North London branch, Central London branch, and the Data Management Specialist Group. My name is Dalim, and I'm chair of the North and Central London branches. And I have some colleagues with me from those groups as well. David Grundy is the secretary of Central London branch, and Amber Hilton is a committee member and a very key member of the Central London branch as well. And we will be helping to facilitate your hopefully enjoyable experience this evening. But there's also somebody else I'd like to introduce you to, and that is Julian Schwarzenbach of the Data Management Specialist Group. He is the chair. Julian, would you like to say hello?
Yeah, good evening, everyone. So I've been chair of the Data Management Specialist Group for I think around 10 years now. It's amazing how time flies when you're enjoying yourself. And every now and again, Dalim and I do joint activities. I did a presentation to the North and the Central London branches. I think it was before all these lockdown thingies. So yes, it seems like a long time ago, but I'm sure it wasn't all that long really ago. But yeah, data is always fascinating. Data is getting more important.
Great, thanks very much, Julian. And I echo those sentiments. But also, we have somebody else I'd like to introduce you to. Somebody who is a fellow director of ISACA London chapter, along with me. And that is Stav Pishis. And he is going to be the moderator for this session. And I'll introduce you and hand over to Stav in just a moment. But first, I also want to mention that we have also with us our presenter, Eldad Chai, who is the CEO of Satori. And unlike the rest of us who are all in London in the UK, where it's getting dark, it's 6:30 and we're settling into another winter stroke spring evening. Eldad, however, is in sunny Israel, and it's a different matter there for him. I think it's probably, to be honest, it's probably all dark there as well. But Eldad is going to shed some light for us on the topic we're examining this evening, and that's about data and what it means for you. To introduce Eldad properly and take us through this session, I'm going to hand over to Stav, but I just repeat, if you have questions, please enter them into the Q&A or chat, and we'll pick those up later and get those questions answered. So thank you very much for attending, and over to you, Stav, to take us through this session.
Thank you so much, Dalim, and good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us this evening. In the next something like half an hour, we'll be together with you. We'll try to speak about data, some innovation, and what it means for you. So without further ado, we shall start. By the way, we'll be monitoring the questions, which can see them. So from now and then, we'll make short stops and we'll just address some questions from the Q&A. It feels a bit far because we don't see each other and we do it via Zoom, but we want to create this experience as real as possible and as engaging as possible. So really, if you have questions, if you think you want to contribute to this session, if you want to express your thoughts, just write your questions, and we have specific stops at which we'll be stopping our talk and just addressing these questions. So feel free to write them here in the chat. So without further ado, as I said, let's start with that. So my name is Stav, and as Dalim presented me, I'm a director in ISACA London chapter, also a co-founder of Cynance, a security consulting company. But the main guest here, or the main meal of this event, is really Eldad Chai, a colleague of mine and a friend. We'll be talking about data. Eldad is an expert in all that goes to data in IT, about in products. He has quite an experience, and I think it would be better to hand over to Eldad to present himself.
Awesome. Thank you, Stav. Hi, everyone. Thank you all for joining. Thank you for having me, Dalim. Really excited to be here today and talk about the future of data. Just a bit about myself, just on a personal level, based in Israel, married and father to 3. on kind of my professional career, coming from cybersecurity leadership at companies like Imperva and Incapsula, and recently founded and CEO of Satori. Real quick, Satori, our mission is to help companies democratize data, make data accessible, usable, embrace the future of data by simplifying governance, access, and privacy. So super happy to be here. I hope this would be interesting. Would love to get your questions along the way. And Stav and I, we had a couple of interesting discussions before this, so I'm sure it's going to be fun for us as well. Cool. So just a bit about, just to set the stage for today's session. So who is this for? I put in, technology professionals, but actually what you'll see in the presentation is actually for everyone who has a profession in the high tech, but also other industries, retail, commerce, is going to be engaged with data one way or another in the either today or the near future. And we'll talk about this in the session, Stav and I. We'll talk about the trends that are driving kind of the future of data. We'll talk about the business aspects of data, the technical aspects of data, how a modern data infrastructure looks like. And we'll talk a bit about what it means for all of us and how would our professional day-to-day look like in this era of data. So it's not going to be a long session. We're going to go through the introduction, finish that pretty quickly, and then move to the session, and really would love to get your questions and have a discussion around that. Stav, I think you're on mute.
Yes, I think this was the sentence of 2020. You were on mute. So yeah, well, that was my turn. Cool. So we talked a bit about the future. So when people think about data and about AI, they imagine probably their most recent films. But let's put it a bit into context and let's think again together, obviously with your help, what does it mean for us and how does it look today? Because obviously we're not talking about robots and flying machines. So what we are really talking about here?
Yeah, I think we tend to think about when somebody puts AI, artificial intelligence, or future of data somewhere, we tend to kind of reflect on our own intelligence. And honestly, just the movies we saw on artificial intelligence, and think about that in those terms, like a replication or a mimic of a human form, robots. It's kind of interesting stuff that, it's always like 200 or 300 years in the future, and it always turns out really, really bad for society. Everyone, gets killed or something horrific. But that's kind of how we think about artificial intelligence. And really the point here, it's always in the future. It's always something distant. It's not here. And if we actually think about it, if you want to move to the next slide, I don't think that's the case. And I'll tell you a little story stuff. So my wife and I, we love Thailand. I don't know, something about the food, the people, the culture, just does it for us. We've been there a dozen of times, just us with the kids, without the kids. Every chance we have, we go there. And pre-COVID, when you could still travel, one evening we're sitting in the living room and we're chatting. You know what? There's a holiday coming up. Maybe we want to go to Thailand. Maybe we want to buy a ticket. I had a discussion, went to bed, and the next day when we went to work and you open the browser, you look at the news. Everywhere we looked, there was an ad for flights to Thailand. And I was kind of blown away. And I came back home in the evening. I told my wife, and she said, you know what? The same happened to me. I'm sure at least some of you can relate to that. And I know there's a lot of conspiracy theories around, companies tapping into our phones. But I think, companies actually don't need to tap into our phones. They know so much about us, and they use AI to predict what we want, what we're looking for, what we're doing, and we see that all around, right? It's when we shop on Amazon. It's when our X-ray is scanned. It's not all negative. It's actually pretty much positive. It's when we apply to a job. It's really all around us. And my take is looking at this is there could be a AI future, we're going to see androids and robots, but really AI is here today. It's not how we think about it, but it's embedded in our lives in ways that really impact our day-to-day. So, by the way, do you agree with that? Do you have like experiences around AI? What applications are you seeing stuff?
So I would say something differently. So, effectively, your Alexa or Siri or whatever doesn't really need to listen to you in the background while you're talking. I would say that effectively they will know about it before you even thought of it. So they will know that in 1 month's time, based on several parameters, based on your characteristics, or in what characteristics, based on what you do for work, based on your health conditions, based on what your friends did because they know who your friends are. And so they will create a profile for you. And by this profile, they will recommend you that like maybe you would like to go for a vacation. And then you will say, wow, that's a great idea. So, and then you have other powers they will make it as easy as possible from you when you engage with them on the experience level, on the payment level, on the share it with others level. Again, it is everywhere. And I think it can bring us to the next slide of really talking about the evolution of data and really like what it was in the past and like where are we heading in the future.
I agree, and great example, by the way. And yeah, what I wanted to show here, so we talked about AI, and I think now when we gave this example, maybe a lot of us can relate to different things they're seeing, but let's try to demystify AI and kind of try to break it down. And how is it different with how is AI different from just data analytics? So this is kind of, maybe there's some data science here that, not going to agree with this or would want to see this more accurate, but this is a really, really good model to think about analytics and how AI is different. So there's kind of 3 maturity levels for analytics that we're seeing with companies. The first and the very basic one is really understanding what's happening around us. You can think about an example like a network of traffic cams in the main highways, monitoring traffic, and then using that feed to identify congestion on the road. So really collecting data and doing some basic analytics to understand all sorts of events and phenomena. So that's kind of the basic level of analytics. And the second one is a bit more sophisticated, and that's geared towards not just identifying events, really understanding the root cause or what's driving these events. So not just, for example, looking at what the weather is now, but looking at what led to that weather, not just looking at the congestion, but really what's leading to that congestion. Where are all these cars coming from? Is there a football game? Did the bars just close and everyone is going home, which I know doesn't happen in the UK, but does happen in Israel. But really it's understanding root cause and then using that information to understand. And then the third level of maturity for analytics is really where the money is. This is where the magic happened. And this is really predictive analytics, which allow companies to not guess, not assume, really know what's going to happen. And in the previous example, this is really what allows companies to, the company that ran the ads that my wife and I saw, to really know that we're going to go to Thailand and we're going to be looking for tickets. And there are numerous examples, but this is just at the business level. This is what's driving so much investment in this technology, and that's why it's moving so fast into the present, because companies understand the business value that predicting, quote unquote, the future provides them, and they want to drive to that future. Yeah, so but maybe Stav, any comment about that? Any examples of predictive analytics you want to share from your field?
Yeah, I would say that from a business perspective, so why, like if you think of it from an M&A perspective, why one company will buy another company? So they can buy them. If it's a startup, they will buy them for the team. If it's a larger company, they will buy them for the clients. And we've seen more and more companies that goes to an M&A process just to buy companies for their data. Because if you have a company with a lot of data that can be valuable, data that you can really do something with it, and you can make, as we call it, data-driven decisions, DDD, and really, because nowadays we see more and more managers that want to base their decisions, senior management want to base decisions, not only on, presentations and nice graphs, but rather on actual data. They want to see like what is the reason for them doing X or not Y. We see more and more A/B testing that takes place in so many fields, so many business fields. So I do agree that data is definitely the new oil, and it's something that every company should consider. It's a massive business value for every company that has some basic business which is going on, and you can run analytics model in it, and it is pretty available nowadays to every company. You don't need to be an enterprise to engage in such activities. And it brings up a lot of questions, which we will try to address here in this sort of session. And I know that you have great examples here of awesome companies that did pretty well, and they're all data driven. And maybe you can share more on these examples.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think by now you should feel very bullish about data and AI. And if you're not, here are a couple of examples. So this is just what I'm showing here in the chart here is one of the leading indexes, stock indexes for AI, compared to the S&P 500 and to the FTSE 100. The AI one, just to if it's not clear, it's the blue one. That's the high one. That performed since the kind of the small crash we had on March, hundreds of times, hundreds percent better than both indexes. So you can see that, and that's not, that's not by accident. That's not something that's temporary. AI is becoming a huge industry. And one example is, if you don't know the company Snowflake, Snowflake is the largest data cloud provider. They provide a platform for storing and analyzing data, both for analytics and data science, and many, many use cases. They're a really impressive company. If you're interested in data, you're probably aware of them. They just had the largest ever software IPO last year. So this just tells you that if you're not bullish on data, you should be looking at that as well. So that kind of concludes the first part of the slide of just expanding kind of how is AI bringing it to ground level, understanding how it's impacting businesses. Explain that the title of the presentation is the future of data, but actually it's a present of data. And what I want to talk next of is a bit about how to impact, getting closer to us, how it impacts us, and talking a bit about the companies and the impact on companies when data comes into play. So
yes,
if you want to move forward.
Yeah, so we talked about the macro, we set the scene like on the national, international level, and now it will be more on the application of data for specific companies and specific departments of companies to this extent.
Yeah, absolutely. So what we're seeing is, since companies see the value in data and value of AI, they're bringing more of it. Once that happens, once a company understands the value of data, they want everyone to use it. They want every department in the organization to leverage data. And that's going to impact all of us, and how we work and how we treat data. And if you're thinking to yourself, I know data, I just did an amazing presentation with standard deviation and all that stuff, or did an amazing stock chart with the last quarter results, you're up for a surprise. You should expect a steep learning curve on data. So not the scaring one, just to say, data is going to be in every profession, in everything we do in our professional life. And the good news is, it's not only the realm of data experts. So the classic example is, think about a data expert, someone who's really savvy about data and can do, amazing analytics, trying to build a model for predicting the weather. And think about the same person doing that alongside meteorologists. Obviously, the outcome is going to be different. And obviously, the domain expertise is required to make sense of data, to build those predictive models. And I think that's kind of the conclusion I have, and kind of how I think the future of data. So the future of data, that isn't necessarily just with the data experts, but really with the domain expert. And each and every one of us will be combining new skills we'll learn about data with our domain expertise to generate unique results for the companies we work with. And the more that happens, the more will be required to collaborate with data experts to understand what data is. And stuff, I think security and privacy and kind of technology in general is like a very good example of how domain expertise comes into play with data. Any examples?
Yes, indeed. And I think a good example, sometimes I speak with people that ask me they tell me I want a tech position, I want to enter to tech. I'm doing, nowadays I'm doing risk, or I'm doing audit, or people may be lawyers or accountants or whatever they do. And they just want to enter the tech industry. And they look at tech, and what they see, or at least they perceive, that the tech industry are only developers that writing code all day long. But you and I, we know that the people that actually sit down and write code and sit with all these blinking screens, that are maybe a quarter or even less than all the tech industry professionals. And it's all about the context. And we see that many companies, many data companies, many security privacy companies, the leaders of these companies are many times coming from completely different backgrounds. So there is definitely place for everyone in this industry, the data industry. And you started your presentation by saying democratizing data, and something that has to do with that is really making it available to people. Same as today for software development, you can effectively drag and drop functions and create code this way. So same things also with data. There are a lot of different utilities that make it really simple, because as I see it personally, I see people that have the context and they will get the platform that just allow them to do the analytics that they need to do in the most simple way. So there is a way of obviously complicating things by these models and by getting things done differently, or getting different things done. But I think the context is something that we see more and more important. And you ask for security, so we see security companies in which you see a data scientist sits together with a security specialist, and they develop the product together. And this is what makes great products. So this is about it. And a bit about the vision.
Yeah, I think there are many examples. I think just Airbnb did a really great job in explaining their vision and how they went about implementing it. So if you're interested in learning how a company democratizes its data, I think Airbnb is a really good case study. I'm not going to go through the entire case study, but just kind of showing or presenting a mindset shift. So data, every company has a lot of data, obviously, and every company engages with analytics. Democratizing data, making data available, engaging with advanced analytics is not a matter of one department or one person. It's a really company-wide event. You know it if your company decides to democratize data. You'll know it, or you'll not notice it if they're not. And really, when a company decides to do that, it impacts all the organization. And really, the idea, I think it's a really nice way to capture a democratizing data, because it's not about some team doing advanced analytics for a specific product. It's really making data available for the entire company. And as we mentioned, the domain experts leveraging that for every aspect of the company. And what that means, if we can move to the next slide, is that, and this is kind of the bottom line for this section before going into the next section, which would be a bit more technical, is that data literacy is going to be important for everyone. Just as speaking the business language, just as understanding our own domain, coming into a profession without the knowledge and the ability to gain insight from data from your specific domain is not going to be an option. What that means really is, not everybody's going to be required to, run sophisticated algorithms or type in SQL commands. That's not what businesses are required. There's actually amazing tools that make data accessible for people that aren't necessarily data expert. But what data literacy means is the ability to make sense out of data, the ability to draw insights, and the ability to ask the right questions, right? There's so many data around us. There's so many types of data. There's so many data points. It's becoming really hard to choose what's more important, what's less important. And being able to do that is going to be a key success criteria in a lot of professions.
Great. And now something maybe more practical to the people that would like to learn more about it in the future, would like to learn some material, read some materials. And we all know that, the problem nowadays, speaking about data, is that you have too much data, you have too many resources. So I know that you picked up these specific resources for people that really want to get into that and learn more, enhance their knowledge. So maybe you can share what you have here.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a mix, right? It's not, there's like business level, technical level. I think it's a mixed audience. So it's great. One thing around data, which is super non-technical, very business level, measure what matters. If you know the OKR system, if you're a leader, but anyone I think should read this. Anyone working has a professional career should read this. It's from John Doerr from Intel, and then investor in Google and other great companies. I think that is key to understanding what's important, what's not. Data science is evolving rapidly. Understanding how that impacts businesses, not at a theoretical level, but really in a practical level. I really like this. And just a really good podcast for data engineering. You don't have to be like a super technical data engineer, at least from my experience. It's a really good way to get up to speed and then keep current with what's happening with the data world. I highly recommend the 3 resources, and obviously there are many more. If you have other recommendations, please put them in the chat. So I'd love to get them myself.
And by the way, don't take our word for that. You have a recommendation for Bill Gates here for the first one. So that may mean something to somebody. So all of that was quite positive. Now let's talk about the problems. Now let's talk about the interesting things.
Yeah, absolutely. Data, more data isn't necessarily better, and isn't necessarily going to get you to the end result. And I think some companies have seen that pattern. I've seen that pattern with companies I worked for, where let's bring in everything. If we're bringing in everything is going to be fine. We'll have all the answers. But the reality is, you have more data, you have more questions. You have more questions about regulation. I'm bringing in sensitive data of people. I mean, what does the regulator have to say about that? What kind of liability do I have? How do I protect the privacy of the people I collect data about? How do I secure the data? What happens if I lose the data? How do I scale it? I have now 10 times the amount of data. Where do I put it? How do I analyze those amounts? And also all sorts of ethical challenges of, am I biased? Am I collecting the right data? And just the general term of, garbage in, garbage out stuff. I know you and I discussed that. Having more data, if it's not high quality, doesn't mean you're going to get a better result. So data comes with challenges. And if you want to move to the next slide, one of the very kind of out there public examples is GDPR. If you don't know, GDPR it's an EU-driven privacy law requiring companies.
I think there are no people here that don't know GDPR.
I agree, but it's a great initiative aimed to protect all of our privacy when we trust our data with commercial entities. And you can see that a lot of companies aren't really doing a great job. And I trust that, you know, for 99.99%, these companies have great intentions. It's just really, really hard to do that. And I think, Stav, maybe you can have some examples or comments about GDPR and how companies deal with that.
Well, yes, you know, in every corporate, there are these departments who are data junkies, like, you know, the marketing departments and sometimes HR in a way. They just want to collect as much data as possible. And to be honest, I understand them, because the more data they have, they can, you know, reach more leads and they can perform their tasks better. But then you have initiatives like the GDPR, and you have other laws and regulations which tells people, listen, guys, you need to be responsible. So you need to know what you're collecting and provide good reason for why would you want to have it, and for like why your retention period should be as it is. So this is something that I would say it's a game changer in a way that nowadays it's not only nice to have, like, I mean, not to have massive or huge amounts of data they don't need, which obviously costs you a lot to retain it. But also you have an obligation to protect it. And then the more data you have, so again, potentially, if you will get breached, you will get hacked. And we see nowadays there is a massive increase in cyber incidents. And you know, when you speak with companies, we tell them, listen, it's not a question of if, but rather when. So in the one day, in the day will come, your company will get breached. And then the question is how much data your attackers will take, and how much data potentially will be able to leak outside. So you don't want to be in a position that you might say, wow, I really regret that I collected this data in the first place. And this is really echoes to the challenge that we are discussing here. And this is also why it is interesting to see what solutions we have nowadays in order to kind of balance this equilibrium, and really to try to see like what solution will be both feasible for collecting what we need, but also managing it in a responsible way, responsible internally, responsible externally, responsible for the regulator. And so this is why it's going to be pretty interesting now to see how we're going to present it.
Yep. So let's move deeper into the technical realm. And I think Stav, you mentioned kind of data breaches and privacy, and you know, again, and I said, I think every company wants to do the right thing. It's just hard. And let's try to figure out, just explain very high level why it's hard. So I'm showing here my name, my gender, my age. Yes, I'm that old. And you know, when we think about, when we look at the name, when we look at the gender, we look at an age, that comes with some context, right? I might want or not want to share my name. I might want, or you know, maybe I'm not interested in sharing my gender. And maybe if you know my name and my gender and my age, you can somehow find my address by looking at another repository. So there's all sorts of sensitivities and kind of social and privacy context to stuff to the data about us, data about other stuff. When you put that in the database layer, you get zeros and one. That's it. That all that context disappeared. It doesn't exist anywhere. It might exist in somewhere else. It doesn't. The data, the bits don't carry that context, and that's kind of, I know it's really abstract, but that is part of the challenge. The fact that the legal, the privacy, the social context of data doesn't translate into the bits. And yeah, if we want to move to the next slide,
or maybe you can say the bits don't care.
Yeah, the bits, they're agnostic. I mean, they don't really care. And companies are trying to deal with that. And over the past years, a new kind of modern data infrastructure evolved, mostly around bits, to be honest, mostly around storing more bits and analyzing more bits. I do want, if you know, probably for the data society, data management society, this is kind of a no-brainer. Reddit seeing it, but maybe for other people, this is important context. Again, we all need to understand data better. So this is kind of modern, very high-level data infrastructure. You have a lot of data sources. You have tools that are called ETLs or ELTs, extract, transform, load, or a combination of that, going into different types of data stores, data lakes, data warehouses, and stream of data. I'm not going to go into each type of data, but I do encourage you to, if you're interested, to read a bit about data lakes, data warehouses, and stream services. They're all key components in modern data infrastructure. Then you have the tools to analyze data, to do data science, data analytics, visualization, and you have your consumers. And kind of looking like an outsider comes security and privacy. So you have like this nice stream of data coming from the sources to the consumers, and then that security governance is like an umbrella for a lot of these topics, and privacy are kind of the outside. And what we're seeing, if you want to move to the next slide, and stuff, I'll also love to get your impact, is kind of part of the problem. So the bits are going from sources to consumers. They lose their context completely around privacy, what that data means. The bits don't care stuff. Thank you for that. And really all that process of reinserting that context into the process, making sure that when you deal with a name, when you deal with sensitive data, you have that context is all manual. You have amazing technologies to consume and analyze data, and you have a lot of people trying to make sure that nothing bad happens, and that's why bad things happens, because it's manual, it's slow, it doesn't work that well. Would you agree, Stav?
Yeah, I think it's right, because many times, companies, they have technologies, but they don't really know how to use them. So I would say it should start with, responsibility of understanding what you have, and then looking for the best way to do it.
Yeah. Maybe if we can move to the next slide, I do want to show some examples. So the future isn't that gloomy for us. I think there's a lot of advances in how companies look at governance, security, and privacy. And there's a lot of really, really interesting technologies. If you're interested, I do encourage looking at least at some of these. And as there is data infrastructure or data architecture, there is now, companies are building a security and privacy stack of technologies coming from operations, how to operate privacy, managing the metadata, identifying their data, managing access and entitlements to data, who can use what, and just having privacy and security built in to their technology stack. So it's not an oversight, it's not a bolt-on, but really part of it. I think this is really, really welcomed and really, really important trend in the industry, where companies understand that they have an ethical, beyond the legal obligation, an ethical obligation to treat data, our data, in the right way and keep it safe.
Yeah, and it echoes back again to the responsibility concept. And it's really for companies to understand where they want to be, what they want to do, and then choose a technology that really will help them to get there. Because there are so many companies who just buy technologies without really knowing what they are doing. So you see, like, okay, whatever, OneTrust, so just let's buy OneTrust because we heard it's great. But then effectively these products, without the proper use of them, without the right people who will manage them, without the right people that put, because a system is basically, it's a process, automatic process. And as you say, garbage in, garbage out. So if you don't feed it with the right things, you can't expect that the outcome will be whatever you want to get. So it's all about the context and use the things right for your specific company, for your specific use cases. And that's about, again, that echoes back to the responsibility concept.
Yep, I totally agree with that. It's a really, really good comment. So I think we'll start to wrap up and just share some final thoughts, and then I'm already seeing questions coming in. Thank you everyone for submitting questions. We'll address them in a second, and I'd love to kind of talk about these questions. So just going back to the beginning, we think about data in data and AI in human terms and kind of a replication of ourselves. But that might happen in the future. The future of AI in business is already here. And if you move to the next slide, we're seeing companies really predicting the future. They do it for a specific use case in a specific scope, but this is from 2016 about Netflix recommendation engine. They're really polite, saying 20% of all subscribers chose their own title, but really it's 80% of us don't know what we want to see, and Netflix knows better than us what we want to see next. And Stav, you mentioned sometimes we mess it up when we mix our profiles with the kids and the spouse, and I get a lot of kids movies on my Netflix, but really this is from 2016. We're 5 years ahead from there, so it's probably higher. The AI is not in the future, it's in the present, and it's impacting all of us.
Great. So how would you summarize this session?
Yeah, I think that there's a common kind of saying of software is eating the world. I think data is now eating the world. I think it's going to be a competitive advantage for businesses. If you want to survive, if you want to lead your market, you'll have to be data driven. I think that's going to impact each and every one of us in every profession. And I think we should expect changes in teams, in architecture, and we should be ready for that and be proactive and learn about data to help companies go through that transformation.
And also, if you're not techie, that doesn't mean that you lost your career path or lost your faith with data, because everybody can do that. There are also so many courses online. And again, it goes back to the context. So if you're an expert in your context, in your field, you can, gain this advantage of data with other people, or just by reading some of the books that Eldad mentioned or some other resources. So with that note, I would like to thank you, Eldad, for the session. And now we had some questions here in the chat, and let's see what else we can talk about here and how else we can benefit the guys here. So M. Harun says that 80% of data falls under structured data. How the data scientist or data analytics handles the unstructured data? What do you think?
Yeah, I think today structured, so just for everyone, structured data is, you can think about tables, you can think about kind of standard relational data stores. Everything is kind of, there's a column and the data in there, like in Excel, for example, and unstructured is like files, documents, Excel files, images. It could be anything that doesn't have like a very clear structure. There's also semi-structured, but we'll skip that for a second. So I think AI takes a big part in handling actually unstructured data, because just the fact that it is unstructured means that the attributes associated to them need to be understood. So there's a lot of companies that help, for example, there are a lot of technologies that help companies quickly go through sets of unstructured data and analyze them. I have a friend that he developed a technology. He has a company that does intellectual property searches for patents. So, and that's, patents are like, nobody understands them. They're huge piles of text with images, and the common practice for humans to go, you do a patent search and to look for all the patterns with the same name, with the same keywords. It's a very error-prone process, and he built technology that works through that unstructured data, extracts the attribute through artificial intelligence, and has a really, really good match ratio for patents. So that's an example how data science and analytics help with unstructured data, and it's a slightly different, sometimes even more challenging problem. Great.
And then to the next point, which is mentioned by Julian. Julian is saying that we're talking here a lot about data, and that it's like we talked about the quantity of data, but what about the quality of data? And because quality of data is as important, I guess, as the quantity. And really, what are your views on that?
Yeah, so my views on that is I totally agree that quality is important. So I'll give you an example. Actually, a personal example. We go in a room. So was part of a leadership of a team. There's the weekly executive meeting. The chief revenue officer brings up a chart with numbers, and we started a discussion and an argument about the accuracy of the numbers. And kind of the marketing has their own, that's pretty common. Marketing have their own numbers, and the finance team has their own numbers, and nobody really trusts the data because they don't understand where it's coming from. It might be biased. So data quality, I mean, there's a technical level of data quality. So just, are the numbers in the right range? Are they coming from, is the calculations, are they accurate? Are there any kind of weird deviations? But there's also data quality at the people's level of trusting that the data is coming from the right source. It was handled by the right people. And I think, so one of our advisory board members is Anita from Disney. And I think they're, for example, from what I'm hearing, they're doing a really, really great job in figuring out that they're doing the right practices around data quality and making that available to the management team. So data quality, just my view, is super important. It's important at the technical level, at the people's level. And if you don't have that, it's really going to be hard to build a data-driven organization, because every person is going to have their own view on the data.
Great. Thank you for that. Now we have a question from Nadine. And Nadine asked quite an interesting question, something that really appears in many sessions and many discussions, especially around tech. So how do you think the current technological skills gap will affect the world of work?
Yeah, so this is a great question. I think we find that in multiple industries, not just in data. Stav, you probably see that in security and privacy. I mean, companies are...
Oh, definitely, of course.
Would love to hire amazing talent in security, and they have the budget to just can't find the people. I think the same is happening with data. What specifically I'm seeing with data is that you're seeing all these domain experts being service providers for the big firms. So I think it's becoming more and more common for organizations around data, but also around other domains like security, to look out for consultants and service providers, both technology service providers and just people who can run the systems for them or engineer for them. So what the skill gap is creating, it's creating new industries for services and products to help companies. So companies can focus on their core business and business value, and then they don't have to have anything in-house. There's obviously, that means that you're going to see more outsourced to other countries. There's a lot of impacts on society and geopolitics. I'm not going to go into that, but I think basically the evolution of service providers and products is going to continue.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and actually there is a tendency that we see nowadays. More and more companies are just handling freelancers and people who are contractors. And if you think about the world of work 20, 30, 50 years ago, it was less common that you had all these freelancers and consultants who are nowadays are part of the companies almost. And that also brings me to something which I read in a book lately. There's this book called Surveillance Capitalism by Shoshana Zuboff. Maybe you heard about it or that. And then she talked about the fact that there is a lost generation. So you see all the most talented data scientists and all these people that are really great with data and the geniuses in data. And then these people, instead of creating the next generation of scholars and of students, they've just been hired by the tech giants, and they go work for Facebook, for Google, for these giants that obviously can afford them salaries that no university in the world can afford. And then the potential students are not their students, and then you just lose large amounts of people that could have entered this field, that could have get education from people like this, and could have worked along them by doing researches and other things, and you just don't see it. So obviously there are different ways to look at it, but that's also one angle that shows you that, again, this knowledge or this skills gap, which Nadine's referred to, we can't say for sure that it will be ever closed. So now to the next one, we have something here from Christine. So Christine believes that the way the UK's bankrupt shops have been broken up is to obtain all the consumer data. The shop's owners has now moved with the times. Yeah, so that's a good point. What else? A question from Pierre, when one can study masters in AI? So that's an interesting question. I guess there are plenty of places. Any specific place in that you want to recommend worldwide?
Not anything I would know in the UK, but yeah, I'm sure there's a lot. I think there's an answer here in the chat that might be relevant, but I don't have any recommendations. Sorry.
Okay, no worries, no worries. I guess a good Google search will also do the work. 1 second, let me see what we have here as well. All this. Okay, do you think that's quite a complicated one from Therese? Do you think that AI generated or derived data can be as reliable as standard or recorded data?
So I think it's a great question. For me, it goes to ethics. So generally, I think yes. And I think actually, whether we like it or not, that's what's going to happen. And I do think the question is in place because there's a lot of risk there. So let's say you're trying to provide a model for how many tax returns you would need to give away to people, but the data that you're using is biased. Maybe you're looking at just one region. Maybe you're looking at just one city. Maybe you're looking on a specific set of people, and that obviously biased your results. The risk there is that it biases your results in a way that's not clearly understood. The AI is shuffling the data. It's producing some conclusion. The human mind cannot necessarily understand the model that was used to take the data from point A to point B. So there's a lot of risk there. I think whether we like it or not, it's already happening. So data from AI is driving decisions, it's driving commerce, it's driving business. And I think my personal belief, we're going to see the lawmaker and the regulator putting in guardrails for companies to get control their biases and make sure the data is used in an ethical way. That's the only way to do that.
Yes, so speaking about controls and balances, there is a good point here from Maureen Childs, and the point is that companies are using data to drive up their prices, and where are the trust and ethics? So it seems that many times just companies use them to do what they know to do best. And any thoughts on that, Eldad?
Oh yeah, I think it goes back to the regulator and the lawmaker. They do provide value. I don't see another way to control that, because companies would they're optimizing for shareholders, and that's a place for states and countries to put in laws that make sure that they do the right thing with the data.
Yeah, there's a good, interesting discussion here. Maybe I will ask you, what do you think? Like, what do you think nowadays are the strongest industries that like the AI and data really gets the most benefit there, or the most impact on the business? So people are mentioning that AI is very valuable for crime and health, but really, what are your opinions? What are the most impactful industries for AI nowadays?
Yeah, so I have two answers. So if we're measuring impact in terms of impact on the business, I would say easily fintech. So, financial organizations leveraging AI, they're doing amazing. They've been there before everyone else, and they're getting great returns for their company. But if we're looking at AI for society, I'm not an expert, but in healthcare, but I think healthcare is where it happens. Anything around DNA research, anything around disease research, being able to draw conclusions from huge amounts of data is a game changer for healthcare, because healthcare always has that barrier of they can't run a lot of experiments. If you're running software, you can run tons of models and experiments on your AI and software. Healthcare, the data is slow. You need to, it's really hard to get experiment data. But when you have AI, you can interpolate, you can build your models, you can draw out smarter conclusions from the data you have, and maybe try to simulate some parts of the experiment instead of doing that physically. So I think that's a game changer for healthcare. And I think we're already seeing that in different results in different companies. There's definitely stock markets for healthcare driven AI companies. I'm sure there's a lot of activity there as well.
Yes, John raised an interesting point here, which also we can address. What will be the legal implications of AI's making assumptions and analytics on incorrect data? Would the ones be on the person keying in the data or the business using the data? So I would say, John, for example, if you look at the GDPR, there's a section that said specifically that people can object the use of merely, automatic decision making. So effectively, anyone whose decision was made solely on the basis of AI or this or other algorithm, they can also object it and ask for a person to be involved in this process. So this is what we see now, and it's quite hard to say what the future would hold, but at least for now, this is the case. And I think it's also time for us to thank you once again, Eldad. And before we really wrap up this session, I would like to hand over back to Dalim, and first to thank you all for attending, and also to talk about our upcoming events for the BCS. Dalim, stage is yours. Dalim, you're on mute. No, it's my turn to say that.
So maybe as Dalim.
Hello. Hi. I'm not can you hear me now? No.
Yeah, yes, we can, Dalim, we can. Go ahead.
But you can't see me. Oh no. Now maybe you can see me. I don't know.
We can see you as well.
Oh God, that's terrible. Okay.
No.
Well, look, that was really good. But of course, there are lots more questions around data and so on. And Julian Schwarzenbach, are you still there? Because if you are, I know, oh great, I know your specialist subject, and in fact, the data management specialist group, one of your main topics is about data quality management, and how we can use data and information for our good. So would you like to say anything more about that? Don't have to, but if you want to, the floor is yours.
I think quickly I'll just say something. So my question about data quality, I think is very pertinent. It's an area that I'm very keen on. And one of my frustrations and things to remind people of is that just because you have lots of data, just because the data is valid, just because it's plausible, doesn't actually mean it's right. The data about me could say that I've got a full head of ginger hair. Your analytics might make certain decisions on that basis, but you can tell from the video that I don't have a full head of ginger hair. So yeah, data quality is always there. And I think you need to approach all your analytics from the standpoint of similar to a craftsman using wood to make furniture. What's the grain of the wood? Where are the knots? Where's the rot? How do I make best use of what I've got? Rather than, as in most people do, seem to assume the data is like metal, it's all perfect, and you just use it the way you want. So it's a slightly different mindset. Anyway, if you want, Dalim, I can do a quick plug for our forthcoming event, if that's all right now, if that's the appropriate time.
Go for it.
Yeah, I'll try and get the screen sharing because I do have a little graphic to help on this one. Bingo, hopefully you can see that. So yes, so next week on the 9th of February, the Data Management Specialist Group, we are having another webinar very similar to this. But actually this one we've got Gavin Starks, who's the CEO and founder of Icebreaker One. He formerly was from the Open Data Institute. He was chair of the Open Banking Standard. And what we're looking at is actually about the transition to net zero. So how can opening up data, making data more available, help on that journey? So what is net zero? What is open data? What are the challenges? How can energy data be made open? And then what can be learned from open banking? So that's just a quick plug there. So if you are interested, the details are on the DMSG homepage, or if you look on Eventbrite or on Eventbrite or the BCS website, then there should be some details there. So that's just a very quick plug from me. So back to you, Dalim.
Thank you very much, Julian. Wow, wasn't that fantastic? So we had not one, not two, but three speakers this evening. So I hope you've managed to get some glimpses, some ideas to reinforce your own about this subject that we're all involved in, data and of course information. Now, there's been a rather prominent person over in the USA who's managed to bend data and information in all sorts of directions. So it's brought other things to the fore, such as the topics of ethics, which BCS majors in, and also of AI, manipulation, what is right, what is wrong, how do you analyze that? So there are huge fields opening up here, and we can all be part of that. Somebody asked a question, where can you learn more? Where can you do a degree in AI? Well, there are lots of universities and so on. One answer came through in the chat, you might have seen it, Birkbeck College, London. That's for mature students, and that's a great place. But there are loads of places which will help you to learn more and get certification in terms of data, AI, ethics, data analytics, big data, IoT, numerous other subjects like that. Well, that's going to be my initial final closing remark, as it were. I would just like you to join me in giving great thanks to Eldad and Stav, our great presenters this evening. So thank you very much, you guys, wherever you are. And I know, Eldad, where you are, and I know Stav where you are, but we've also had people from various parts of the UK who have joined us now. So this is the wonderful world, our wonderful virtual world that we're in. Let's continue to make more of it. And so after Julian's information about the data management specialist groups, next webinar, let me give you a few glimpses into what we're doing in the North and Central London branches. Well, we've got something coming up later in February. That's just coming together at the moment, but it's probably going to be on February the 24th. Take a look out at the North London branch or Central London branch websites to get more information about that. Meanwhile, I'll give you some teasers in terms of other things that are coming up. Later, and this is on the 3rd of March, Wednesday the 3rd of March, 6:30 p.m. We have something which is rather intriguingly entitled IT Heads 2021. And we know that IT does head 2021, but this is about the people who head IT in 2021. And this one is entitled Dancing with the Red Queen, IT Leadership in a Changing World. Well, the world's certainly changing, and our speaker on that evening, who is called Finbar Joy, and is an FBCS, fellow of the BCS, and also a CIO and CTO, we'll talk about how the world of CIOs, CTOs, and IT leaders are changing, and how can you, evolve your people's skills and make them more adaptable to enhance the world that we're in, the world not only of changing data, but of changing IT and changing technology. That one is on the 3rd of March. After that, we've got another one, 24th of March, another Wednesday, and that's going to be called IT Projects and the UN Sustainability Goals, because you remember that we're running this series of events and webinars, which are all about where we're going in the 2020s and relate to the United Nations sustainability goals, which include working on eliminating poverty, getting water to everyone, education for everyone, etc., etc. There are 17 sustainability goals that the United Nations has set to help us get through the 2020s. And the World Economic Forum published a report in 2020 showing that 10 of the 17 sustainability goals are directly affected and enhanced by technology and IT. So that's our main theme during our webinars this year. And this particular one feeds into that very well. IT projects and the UN Sustainability Goals on the 24th of March. The presenter is somebody who has been a guru of mine for a long time, I must say. He is called Tom Gilb, and you may well know him. He's another fellow of the BCS. Tom Gilb, and he is the senior partner at Gilb.com, and very much a guru, author of 20+ books and all sorts of things. And I think if you go to that one, you also get a virtual book, or to be more exact, an ebook from Tom as well. So more about that. That's to do with the 24th of March. And again, something that very few people know, but you will in a moment, is that on the 7th of April, we've got something else coming up as well. Again, related to a book. It's called Reality Check. And that the presenter for that is Jeremy Dalton, who's the head of XR at PwC. Well, you'll have heard of PwC, PricewaterhouseCoopers, but what is XR? That is Jeremy's accumulative term for AR and VR. And Reality Check is about the book that he's just written and had published, and will talk us through the next big competitive advantage in business, which in his terms, of course, is AR and VR. So more about that on the 7th of April. So that was just a teaser about things that we've got coming up in 24th of Feb. Not sure what that is exactly yet, but you'll find out. 3rd of March, on the 24th of March, and on the 7th of April. Lots more in store for you coming up, but do enjoy, do keep learning. And again, thank you very much to our presenters, Eldad and Stav, and to you for your questions and for joining this session. All the best. See you next time. Bye for now.